Welcome back. We are closing in on 16 years since Mississippi had its last Democrat as the head of the state. That man was Ronnie Musgrove. Meantime, Democrats have dominated the Attorney General position. I want to bring to today's panel WJTV 12's Gerald Harris from Mississippi Today. We have Larison Campbell, and from Y'all Politics, we have Alan Lang. And let's talk about the governor's race here. What are Democrats going to have to do to capture the governor's mansion once again? It's been 16 years since they've actually had it. What do you think, Larison?
I mean, honestly, they've really got to energize. I think everyone says this, but it's true. They've really got to energize their base. And, you know, I think a lot of people are kind of blowing off the primary that's in a month and a half now. And because, I mean, Jim Hood is a strong candidate. He's won 4 statewide elections. You know, I think a lot of people feel like he has a really good shot at the governor's mansion. But, you know, if he doesn't perform really strongly in the primary, in the August primary, you know, I think that there's a good feeling that he's going to lose momentum going into November. So I think, you know, he's got to get his base out there. He's also got to, you know, I think really capture the African-American vote in the state. And I think the August primary is going to be a good sort of indicator of whether or not he can do that.
Larison, he won 4 back-to-back back-to-back general elections as Attorney General, but those were very competitive races, Alan. And just talk to us about the chances he has.
Well, you know, first of all, you start back in the primary. You look at the last 2 primaries, 2011 and 2015. You had presumptively better candidates, more financed candidates that got beat by far lesser known, far less financed candidates of that were black, and I think that resonated in the primary. I mean, in 2015, you had a guy who spent less than $1,000 on his campaign, who didn't vote for himself, and whose mama didn't know he was running for governor, win the Democratic primary. So all kinds of kind of crazy things can happen in a Democratic primary. That said, I think Hood is a strong candidate. In the fall, you know, I think President Trump is going to loom large over the electoral landscape in Mississippi. He likes it here. I think he wants to be here. He is really popular in that northeast corner of the state where Jim Hood is from. I think it's going to be a huge battleground. I think there and the coast are going to be the 2 places where the governor's race is going to be decided.
So you expect to see the president in Mississippi
no
come
doubt.
the fall to make sure that Republicans retain that seat?
I do. I think he will be active here, likely in person, but if not in person, I think certainly through his endorsement.
Talk about on the Republican side. You've had these debates going on the Republican side. What do you make of the debates, and do you see this being a close race in the primary, or do you see Tate Reeves just taking it?
Well, the closest corollary I've seen is in 2011 when Phil Bryant was a 1-term lieutenant governor. He got challenged by a Coast businessman named Dave Dennis, and that wasn't a blowout. I mean, it was, I think Bryant won and won comfortably, I think, but it was less than 60% of the vote. And I think it's going to be a real, I think it's a real race. I mean, I think that Tate Reeves has an obvious money advantage, but I think that he will, I think it's going to be a real race, but I do expect him to ultimately prevail.
Is he not, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, not calculating the impact of Representative Robert Foster or Bill Waller, who was recruited to kind of run against him?
I think there's a good case that could be made that he initially was not really, you know, counting the impact of Robert Foster. His name recognition he's a 1-term House member. His name recognition out of DeSoto County really wasn't that strong. But I think he is very much taking into account the impact of Bill Waller Jr., who, you know, has name recognition not only from being the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court, but from his father, who was governor, you know, 45 years ago. And, you know, if you're driving down the highway, you see, you know, Bill Waller memorial signs along the state. And so I think, you know, Waller has been, a lot of people have been talking about internal polls, and I think, you know, from what I hear, Waller's internal polls are pretty strong. I think he really is making a big push. He's got energy. He's getting out there. He's campaigning across the state. And I think he's really trying to sort of be that guy, nipping at the lieutenant governor's heels. And, you know, I think that's kind of where he's positioning himself right now.
When you look at the attorney general's race, there's a clear distinction between the candidates. Andy Taggart is a Reagan-Bush kind of Republican. He's been talking about teacher pay, the state flag. Baker is a more conservative Trump. And then Glenn Finch kind of hasn't been in the debates out there. Where do you see that race going?
Well, I mean, she obviously starts with a pretty prohibitive name ID lead, just being a twice reelected statewide office holder. Attorney General's a little different than treasurer. So the question is, will Mississippians connect with her in that, for that skill set? And I think at some point she's leaning in the near term on her name ID advantage, and I think ultimately I think that race will get more competitive. There are a lot of interesting dynamics there.
From someone who knows inside baseball about this, we heard that this is a race that could very likely go to a runoff. Who do you see taking
Honestly, yeah, I totally think you're right. I think a runoff is really likely because you do have Mark Baker in there, who is, I think a lot of people tend to believe that Fitch and Taggart are going to be the lead candidates, but I think he could definitely prohibit both of them from getting 50%. And I think they're both really strong candidates. Taggart doesn't have the name ID that Fitch does, but you brought up the 2015 gubernatorial primary, the Democratic gubernatorial primary. And I think there's a big case to be made that one of the reasons that this unknown truck driver, as it was, beat someone who is a accomplished politician like Vicky Slater was because people are more comfortable voting for a male candidate. And I think that Lynn Fitch kind of has that going against her. They're going to see her name on the ballot. They might know it, but they're going to see a guy, and I think a lot of people might be more comfortable voting for him. So.
It's going to be interesting when these races, these two big races here, the Attorney General's and the governor's race pop up here, and a lot going on. I mean, this is becoming a more interesting race this season than I think we thought it was going to be, particularly in the primary right now.
Yeah, no, I think that's where the fireworks are going to be, and like 2018 with the Senate race, everybody, I had originally thought early that everybody would be, really engaged and spending a lot of money early. It didn't really happen until about 4 to 6 weeks before the election, and it kind of looks like that's where it is now. Everybody's going to save their money and kind of blast it all out at one time.
Well, we'll definitely stay tuned. All right, and when we come back, we'll take a look at an unpopular plan to fix our roads, but it could be time to raise the gas tax. Stay with us, and we'll be right back. Well, could a gas tax be the answer to fix Mississippi roads and bridges? WJTV 12's Gerald Harris spoke exclusively with Transportation Commissioner Dick Hall.
Mississippi once ranked first in the Southeast when it came to highway infrastructure, according to Commissioner Hall. But the state no longer has that title, and he adds a gas tax will save lives and boost the economy. If you've driven on the roads in Mississippi, you more than understand the infrastructure problems.
How bad are we going to let our transportation system become until we do something?
32 years ago is when State Senator Dick Hall and others last passed a gas tax increase. Now Commissioner Hall says the state is long overdue for another hike.
What we did in '87, it turned the economy of Mississippi around. So got to do it again, and the way to finance all of that is the fuel tax.
The price tag could be at the multiple billion-dollar range. Out of the leading gubernatorial candidates, Representative Robert Foster and retired Chief Justice Bill Waller have supported a gas tax. Attorney General Jim Hood and Tate Reeves do not at this point.
Why do we have to wait, always wait for everybody else to do it before we get around to doing it? I tell you why, because of a lack of leadership doing it.
Current usage tax is 18.4 cents per gallon, less than our neighbors. Hall says our economy is struggling because of the lack of investment.
Young people under the age of 40 with a college degree, they're going to where the jobs are, and they're not here. And if we're ever going to do that, we've got to go back the way we did it in '87. And I will argue with anyone that fuel tax increase that we did in 1987 was the #1 economic development event in this state in the last half century.
With primary elections a few weeks away, he has a message for voters.
And that's why these elections this time, and I don't get too political with this, but that's why these elections are going to be so imperative.
The primary election is August 6th. Alaska, Oklahoma, and Missouri are the only states where the gas tax is lower than Mississippi's.
Thank you, Joe. Well, let us know what you think about the gas tax at WJTV on Facebook and on Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Remember, news, weather, and sports are available 24/7 at WJTV.com on our news and weather apps. We'll be back next week. Until then, make it a good night.